everyone, and welcome into this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. As always, myself, Eli, joined by Joe and Isaac. Once again, fellas, we are back from the bye week. It's back to Bears action, and we are taking on the Washington Commanders in Washington. But as always, let's start off with the injury report. First, I'll toss it to you, Joe. The injury report for the Chicago Bears, whenever you're ready.
So like we talked about on Tuesday, um, Quan Brisker and Kyler Gordon, their status was up in the air. It didn't look like they were going to, uh, might, it didn't look like they would play on, it sounded like they weren't going to play on Sunday, but, uh, we've gotten more information on that. So they haven't practiced the past 2 days. So yeah, it probably looks like they're going to be out Sunday for sure. And then Larry Borum and Travis Homer returned from IR and they practiced in full today. And Zach Pickens and Terrell Smith have also practiced back-to-back days. Uh, and they were both full participants today. And then Tyreek Stevenson was limited for the second day in a row. So he may or may not play on Sunday. We hope he is going to play on Sunday because we need the corner. Uh, but I guess the good thing about if Tyreek doesn't play, we at least have Terrell Smith back. So it's a positive. And then Scott Daly practiced 2 days in a row after being hurt in London. So at least we have our long snapper back. Well, our long snapper that is a backup long snapper technically because our main guy is still on IR. But yeah, the those injuries, obviously the big ones are Brisker and Gordon. Again, with Brisker, you can't really do anything about it because it's a concussion protocol. And Kyler Gordon, I guess you don't want to rush him back uh, to make sure he's healthy for the rest of the year, especially if the Bears are going to be a playoff team. Uh, Isaac, I'll pass it to you. Does anything stick out to you on this injury report?
Yeah, so starting off with Brisker, it's good not to rush him back. I don't want him to play, especially because he has a history of concussions. And then with Kyler Gordon's injury, hamstrings are a very um like risky injury to play on. If it even feels a little bit in tight, I don't think Kyler should play. I don't think we're in a position where we need either one of them to absolutely play. So I do hope that they won't play on Sunday, and I think that they're gonna end up not playing anyways. But as far as the other injuries, it's really nice to see that Terrell Smith and Zach Pickens are full participants in practice because they've basically been injured the whole season. And these are two guys that are young and need reps to be able to prove that they deserve a second contract, especially when they were drafted in the third, and I believe Terrell Smith was the sixth or fifth rounder. But besides that, the team looks relatively healthy. I think that we have a really good chance of beating the Commanders on Sunday. And I'll pass it over to you, Eli, on your thoughts on the Bears injuries, and then as well as to go into detail with the Commanders injury report.
Yeah, so I think I'm with you guys mostly on these injuries. It does kind of concern me that Jaquan Brisker is taking this long to get back from concussion protocol, especially after the bye. If it were a 1 week thing, I wouldn't feel as bad about it, but maybe they're just being precautious because, as you mentioned, he does have a history of these concussions. So not terribly upset if he doesn't go, which I think we can all agree he probably won't. Kyler Gordon, as you kind of mentioned, hamstring injuries. That's not an injury that you can kind of play through because it's a muscle that's constantly just being used when you play football. So I'm fine with the decision if he doesn't go. I think it's for the best. When he's on the field and he's healthy, you can make the argument that he's one of, if not our best defensive player, outside of Jalen Johnson, obviously, but get him back healthy next week, hopefully. Tyreek Stevenson was limited today, as you mentioned, Joe. That's a big one. I think he's probably gonna go if I had to guess. We'll see how that pans out through the rest of the week. But it also, as you mentioned, good to have Bourne back, and Terrell Smith is a much needed depth piece for us because this will be a better offense than we faced in weeks prior. So we're going to need all the help we can get and be as healthy as we can be for this matchup. And having Zach Pickens back, hopefully this defensive line rotation will be much improved with him in the lineup. He hasn't shown a whole lot in his time here, but He also hasn't been able to stay very healthy, so maybe this is the start of getting himself into that inner defensive line rotation. But with that being said, we'll kind of move into the Washington Commanders injury report. Uh, and feel free to chime in if there's any that I missed, but this is just what I've got pulled up. Tackle Brandon Coleman did not practice today. Obviously, Jaden Daniels has not practiced this week. Clellan Farrell, defensive end, did not practice today. Nick Allegretti, a guard, was limited in practice. Dorrance Armstrong, defensive end, limited with a rib injury. Tyler Biadasz, their center, was limited today with a thumb injury. Diami Brown, Derek Forrest, and outside linebacker Dante Fowler Jr., who's been one of their more productive edge rushers this year, was limited today. Cornelius Lucas, tackle, was limited. Safety Tyler Owens was limited today. And cornerback Emmanuel Forbes Jr., cornerback, practiced in full today. And then obviously the big news has been Jonathan Allen, the Jonathan Allen injury for them. So they're pretty limited up front, I would say. So hopefully this is a week where the Bears offensive line can hold strong with as many injuries up front as they have. My guess is that Dante Fowler will probably go. I think this is just one of those designations to where they're being more safe than sorry, but I think he'll play and he'll probably be their main edge rusher on Sunday. But Isaac, I'll start with you. Do you have any big thoughts on this Washington Commanders injury report, or any injuries that I might have missed on their front?
Um, Besides like the various injuries the Commanders have, the main thing is Jaden Daniels. Obviously, he didn't practice today, and Adam Schefter reported that the plan is for the Commanders to try to have him practice tomorrow, or sorry, by the time you guys listen to this, practice on Friday. So, um, I think it comes down to whether the Commanders think this is a must-win game for them. I don't think they are in the same situation as the Bears in terms of having to win this game, because unlike the Commander, or unlike the Bears, the Commanders are in a division where they're relatively comfortable. They're, in first place right now. They're not competing with a bunch of other teams that have positive records like the Bears are in the NFC North. So I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to play on Sunday. I think especially because if he's barely practicing on Friday, I don't know if it's worth risking putting him in, especially against this Bears defense that is, for the most part, relatively healthy. And where we're not healthy, it's a secondary, and Jaden Daniels isn't really going to get affected by that in terms of like physical tackling or anything like that. So I just think that if I was the Commanders coach or GM or whoever's responsible for making sure that who's playing and who's not, I wouldn't play Jaden Daniels. But besides that, it's good that, I mean, I you never want to see players injured, but to have a weekend defensive line again, because that will give more confidence to the Bears offensive line that has struggled recently in the beginning of the season. And yeah, we'll see, how they do on Sunday. And I'll pass it over to you, Joe. What were your thoughts on the Commanders injury report?
So you kind of covered everything in Jaden wise. I don't think he'll play. Uh, just because he hasn't practiced the last 2 days, and even if he practices on Friday, there's no reason to have him play. And potentially hurt his ribs even more. Like, it's not they're not broken, obviously. That it might be a cartilage thing. There's no real like diagnosis. We don't know the diagnosis, but if it's a cartilage thing, it's probably safer to have him not play on Sunday, especially because, like you said, Commanders aren't in a tough division. Their biggest competition in that division is the Eagles, who are also, I think, 4-2, or they're 4-2 or 4-3, I think. But they still play them twice this year, so they they can lose a game and still pick up and still be able to win the division by beating the Eagles twice. So I think they would just. I don't think they'll play him. I think he'll sit out. Then the other big injury, uh, if they're down their center Tyler Biadish, that's big for them because their offensive line has played really good. I mean, I guess that goes along too with Nick Allegretti. If those two guys miss, those are big misses for them on their offensive line. Their offensive line has played really good this season and been able to protect Jane Daniels and give him time to throw the ball. So if those two aren't in the game, then the Bears will be facing obviously backups, and their D line has been playing better than we expected. So going against backup O linemen will be uh make it easier for the Bears to get pressure on Mariota if that's who's going to be starting it. And I think we can all agree that's probably who's going to be starting. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but Mariota doesn't do good under pressure. Um, he's shown that throughout his career. So, I mean, yeah, those two linemen missing are going to be a big issue for them. And then I think I agree with Eli that Dante Fowler will probably end up playing. I don't think they could really sit out many of their defensive linemen because a lot of their defensive linemen are hurt, and they also don't have Jonathan Allen, like you mentioned, because he's obviously has an injury. He's their was their best player, so any more misses is kind of like a they can't really miss anyone else. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on the injury report of the Commanders.
Yeah, I think another underrated part of this matchup is the connection that we've seen through 7 weeks, or I guess this would be 8 weeks now. Well, 7 weeks played and going into week 8. Is the connection between Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin has had a pretty good year. I would say he's on pace to have his best career year with Jaden Daniels so far. So if Daniels, who we kind of all presume might not play, uh, and leaning towards not playing because I don't think it's very often that you miss 2 practices in a row and then you're limited on a Friday, if, hypothetically, and then you play on Sunday. I don't think that's really typical, but, the rest of the week is going to spell that out. But uh, through the first 7 weeks, Terry McLaurin has 35 receptions for 454 yards, 13 yards per catch, and 4 touchdowns on the year, which already matches his touchdown total from last year. So he is well on his way to exceeding every career mark, depending on if Jaden stays healthy and if he can kind of move forward with Mariota and keep the same pace as he's been having. But uh, obviously, that's going to be a big factor, and that's just going to factor into this matchup. But uh, talking about this game, what are some of your guys' keys to victory? Joe, I'll start with you. What do the Bears need to do to limit this Commanders offense that's played pretty well through the first 7 weeks?
So I think the biggest thing the Bears need to do, no matter who the quarterback is, and like we've talked about, it's going to be we all think it's probably going to be Mariota, is stay what's the word I'm looking for? S- Stay true to your rush lanes and don't let the quarterback get out of the pocket and rush down the field, like and get a bunch of yards because that's what Daniels likes to do. And Mariota can do kind of the same thing. He's not as explosive as Jenny Daniels is at this point in his career, but he can still make the running plays like he has always been able to do. Um, so yeah, there's a word for what I'm trying to think of, but I can't remember the word. Um, so yeah, just make sure you stay home in your rush lanes against a Mariota. And then we also need to see an improved running defense just in general because the running backs are good. Like Brian Robinson's a really good running back. They have uh Eckler who he's his better years are behind him, but he's still a decent back. Um so they gotta stay home in the rush lanes on like in the running game too, not just on the quarterback, and be able to tackle uh both guys. They can't let explosive runs up that they've been doing the past uh 3 weeks. Well, I guess the whole season really. They've it's kind of been better the past couple weeks, but actually just against the Jaguars, against the Panthers, they did let up 30 plus yard touchdown run. So just the Jaguars, they had a better running defense, but the Jaguars were also down the whole entire game, which kind of uh made their rushing attack like you couldn't use it. They couldn't use it. So that's that. And then on offensively, I think the Bears need to attack the Commander secondary early. This Commander secondary isn't very good. Their best uh what s- their best cornerback is Benjamin St. Just, and last year uh the Bears destroyed them when they played them. DJ Moore had over 200 yards receiving, and Justin Fields threw for I think it was like 278 or something. Maybe it was 378. It was one of those two numbers in that it was in that range of numbers. Um, but um, Caleb Williams is obviously a lot better than Justin, and it's pretty much the same defensive secondary in Washington, and maybe even a little worse. So I don't see a reason that Caleb shouldn't be able to throw for more than like he should be over 300 yards. Probably this could be his first ever 400-yard passing game, which would be the third ever Bears quarterback to do it in a game, which is crazy. I mean, I know we've had terrible quarterbacks or like not good quarterback play for this generation, but that's still insane. The two people that have done it before, well, I think Cutler may have done it once. Uh, but there's one person that's in that list twice, and that was in the 60s. So that was even in the time when they really threw the ball a lot. Which is again just goes to show you how bad the Bears quarterback play has been throughout their franchise history. Um, so yeah, that's definitely it in the passing game, and then obviously just continue to try to establish a run. We've been doing a better job of that the past 3 weeks. Isaac, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, first I agree with everything you were mentioning, Joe. Um, and then I just want to add in a couple little things. So on defense, I do want to see a breakout game for Montez Sweat because he's kind of like a slow starter to the season, and then he kind of picks it up towards the end. It's the same thing this season where he hasn't really had the stats to show that he's one of the top edge rushers in the NFL. But that's not his fault. He's basically been double teamed like more than half of the like more than 50% of the snaps that he's played this season. And it's because we don't really have another elite pass rushing player opposite of him. But I think this is definitely the first game where I can see a breakout game. And part of it is because he was traded from the Commanders last season. And so this might be like a revenge game for him. He's probably going to play with 120% intensity. So I'm going to pay attention to the defensive line when the Bears are on defense. And it's not just Montez Sweat. I'm also interested to see how much Zach Pickens plays because he's going to be back. He was our third round pick. He, like Eli mentioned, he hasn't been on the field much because he's been injured a lot. And if we're spending a third round pick, or if we drafted him this high up, I would want to expect more. I want to see more from him. So that's on defense. And then on the offensive side, just one thing I thought of right away was I hope the running backs stay healthy this game because last year when we played the Commanders, Khalil Herbert got hurt. I think Deontay Foreman was hurt, and we ended up just running with Kerry Blasingame, the fullback. So I don't want to see any injuries on offense. I do want to see more consistency on the offensive line this week, especially because we're playing a weak defensive line. Like Joe mentioned, they have a couple injuries. And yeah, those are just my keys to the game, and I'll toss it over to you, Eli, and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I would just say that I think this Commanders defense, from every metric that I've seen, they're not terrible. They're just below league average, like in that 18 to 19 range in both passing and rushing. So I think our offensive game plan can be pretty balanced. I don't think we really need to attack them either way. Specifically, I do think that their secondary is weaker than their rush defense. Um, so I think our receivers can have a big day with Caleb Williams, but also uh, keeping DeAndre Swift involved in the game plan. I don't think you really sway away from anything that you've been doing these last few weeks. Just keep the consistency. And Shane Waldron mentioned that over the bye, something he was giving himself some self reflection on was starting fast. And that's something we've seen in the last few weeks that the Bears kind of struggled with. And that goes back to the whole scripted play kind of debacle that came out, that the Bears weren't scripting plays for the first few weeks of the season, and that's changed. But we have seen that the Bears offense has started slow, whether it's starting with a 3-and-out or starting back-to-back drives with 3-and-outs and then slowly finding their rhythm. This is a game to where I think both Shane Waldron and the Bears want to score on that opening drive and kind of set the tone early and dictate the game with their defense. So I do think it's an opportunity for the Bears to have a high scoring affair, but also I think this is a game to where they can run out the clock and not score as many points as they have in the last few weeks, depending on what it is they really want to make happen during this game. I think whatever they want to do, they can dictate because there's nothing really defensively that Washington can do right now to limit this Bears offense. What we have averaged like 30 something points per game in the last 3 weeks, I believe. So right now we're rolling and we have an identity. It's just a matter of what kind of day we want our offense to have. And then, defensively for Washington, they have allowed, I have it here, 131.6 rushing yards per game to opposing offenses. So again, this could be a day where DeAndre Swift can have another major day and keep stacking these performances back to back and get this Bears offense the run game that it deserves and continually helping Caleb Williams develop in the rush game. And overall, just continue to improve this offense. But Joe, I'll toss it to you.
Sorry, yeah. One more thing. We've been talking about how they have a pretty bad secondary in Washington, but they only allowed an average 197.6 passing yards, but that's also to say they haven't really faced many good teams. Like the 3 good quarterbacks they faced have been Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. Mayfield threw for 289, and then Lamar and Joe Burrow both threw for over 300 yards. So that's also another reason why I think that Caleb Williams could and should throw for at least 300 and maybe even 400 because he's more of the caliber of Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. I know those are pretty lofty expectations, but it looks like he's trending that way instead of like where Deshaun Watson is now and Daniel Jones. Like, I think we can all agree that Williams looks better than those guys. So that's another reason why I think that we will have a very good game in the passing game.
Yeah, so that kind of gave me another thought here. In the past few weeks, really for the entire season, the narrative around the Bears compared to other teams in the NFC North is that we haven't beaten anybody. But then you kind of look at Washington, and it's kind of that same discussion. So the conversation around this week, I think personally, and I'll ask you guys this as well, I think if we beat this Commanders team, to me, I think we all agree that this Commanders team, this defense especially, has not been very good. But overall, the narrative around this Washington team has been that they're on fire and they're this and they're that. If we beat this team, I am 100% counting it as a quality win because, all week it's been between the back and forth between Bears and Commanders fans is that the Bears haven't played anybody. And then Bears fans throw that narrative right back in their face and say they haven't played anybody. But it's been spun that the Washington Commanders are a good team and that the Bears haven't played anybody. So to me, that gives us kind of the leeway to say, okay, well, if we beat Washington, then we've beat a good team. And Joe, I'll kind of start with you. My thoughts, you've kind of gathered that I think if we beat Washington, that's a quality win. And I think the conversation around Chicago should change, but I'll ask you that kind of same question.
My question, I'm going to pop it right back to you real quick. You still consider a quality win even though Jenny Daniels isn't going to start?
See, that is a good part of it. To me, they played Carolina last week, which, you can put anybody against Carolina right now, not to kind of pile on them. You can put anybody against Carolina and they're going to score points. But I think the offense didn't look too much changed from between Mariota and Jaden Daniels. So that is a tough aspect to my question. I would say it's less of a quality win, but I would still count it as a quality win.
Okay, cool. The reason I asked that is because yes, obviously look too much different with Mariota, but like you said, the Panthers aren't that good. The Bears have a way better defense, so I think there's a big discrepancy for the Commanders this week with Mariota versus with Jim Daniels against our defense. I I kind of agree though. I think it's less of a quality win, but I still think it's kind of a quality win. I mean, they're the best team that we faced on our schedule besides the Texans, and we lost to the Texans. Um, I mean, the two best teams that we've played have been two best teams record-wise that we played have been the Colts and the Texans, and they're both either at 500 or above 500. And the Colts aren't even that good of a team. They've just played worse teams. Somehow been able to beat them. Um, but yeah, I think it's a sort of it's not as much of a quality win as if they had Daniels, but I think it's still a quality win uh over a lesser quality win, but a quality win over Mariota. How about you, Isaac?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. Not having Jaden Daniels starting and playing is definitely a big factor to making this not as big as a quality win. But I'm a little different in my perspective of things because in my mind, I think every win is a quality win, but there's like a level of how much quality is in that win, if that makes sense. So, for example, like the Panthers, the Jaguars, like yes, they suck, they're not really good teams, but we beat them by a lot of points. Like we put up more than 30 points, and we held them to under, I think, like 15 points for both teams, or both teams. So that's like in my book, that's a good quality win because like yes, they're bad teams, but you're supposed to beat up on bad teams if you're a good team, and that's what we did. So with the Commanders, if we do the same thing, it's obviously not going to be as it's not going to have that good feeling, because we're not beating a JD Daniels led Commanders team. But at the same time, like if we put up more than 30 points again against this Commanders team, and then these Commanders fans that have been talking crap all week, they're probably gonna just make excuses all week. Our defense sucks. Jaden Daniels wasn't playing, but you just gotta play with who's in front of you, and you can't postpone the game because your star quarterback is out. But yeah, I'm agreement with you guys. It's gonna be a quality win if we win, but just probably not as much as like if we were to beat the Packers or something like that.
I love that you brought that up there at the end because to me, I think if we win this game, as you kind of mentioned, the excuse is going to be either, okay, well, our defense isn't very good, or Jaden Daniels didn't play, which is kind of, to me, again, you don't want to wish that a guy stays hurt, that kind of thing. But this is the only reason that I wish Jaden Daniels would play, is so that we can say we beat him. And then the excuse would be, oh, well, he was halfway injured. I don't think this Bears team is ever going to get credit until we play that week 11 game against Green Bay. I think that is going to be the moment. And it kind of harkens back to that, and the circumstances are different. I think the conversation around that 2018 team was a lot different than it has been this year up to this point. But that game against the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football, I think that was the turning point in that season to where everybody started kind of looking at the Bears as a serious threat. And it'll be that much sweeter. I don't want to steer too much away from the Commanders conversation, but that week 11 game, I think, will be the deciding factor for fans league wide on what they view the Chicago Bears as this season. But to kind of get back Commanders wise, let's talk Bears performances this week. We'll start with an offensive player and a defensive player. Who are two Bears, one on each side of the ball, that you want to see have a good game this week? And Isaac, I know you kind of mentioned Montez Sweat, but if you have someone else in mind, also feel free. I'll start. I think this is another week where Cole Kmet can really be involved in this offense. The offense has gone through him in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I know it's an easy answer, but I just feel like this is a game to where he can easily have an 8 reception, 90-yard plus game, 2 touchdown kind of thing. And then on defense, I would love to see Tyreek Stevenson come back and have a dominant performance. This is a week to where I think the Bears possibly will just park Jalen Johnson on the left side of the field because there's been a narrative around Daniels, uh, if he does play, that he likes to target the right side of the field. Now, I'm not too familiar with Mariota and what he likes, how he likes to distribute the ball. But this is saying that if Daniels plays, I think having Tyreek on the right side of the field, having him having those pass deflections and possibly interceptions, I want to see a big game out of Tyreek. So I'm going to go with Stevenson and Cole Kmet as my two. Joe, I'll go with you. Who are two Bears, one on offense, one on defense, that you want to see have a big game this week?
I'll start with offense. I think, I mean, people have been saying this, uh, but Rome is due for another really big game. And honestly, I think any three of our receivers, even I think two of them could go over 100, but any three of them could, because they're all that talented. But I think it's probably going to be Rome and DJ again. But Rome's finally going to have, eight, seven, eight catches for another 100 yards, maybe two touchdowns this week. Because against the Colts, I'm pretty sure, right? He had that seven catch, 109-yard, one touchdown game. Um, so I think it's going to be that type of performance again from Rome. And then defensively, I know Pickens is just coming back, and I know there really isn't much expectations for the guy because he didn't play well his rookie year and he's been hurt all year this year. But I'd like to see him do something significant. Uh, doesn't have to be consistent. Just have a splash play or two this week. Give us something to look forward to, because if you come back and can't and don't do anything this week, then I know I'm skipping ahead a week, but if you come back and don't put if you put two back-to-back games together where you don't do a single thing, we're just everyone's gonna lose faith in you. So do something, make a splash play or two this week, make a splash play or two next week, uh, and we'll have faith in you again.
Yeah.
Isaac, I'll pass it over to you.
I was gonna say you're reading my mind, Joe, because those were basically the two players I was gonna mention. And then on defense, I just want to say Montez Sweat for me because I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but he's the player I'm looking forward to having a big game on defense. And then on offense, I was gonna say Keenan Allen because Rome Odunze has already had a 100-yard game week 3, like Joe mentioned, and DJ Moore had a couple 100-yard games this year, but Keenan hasn't had that 100-yard game yet, and I really want to see him just take over a game like he's done with the Chargers throughout his tenure with the team. And it would be nice to see that Caleb can, get all three of his main targets at receiver, have them have 100-yard games because, Keenan is a veteran in this league, but at a certain point when you're not getting the production that you would hope for, it might start to affect you mentally. And I just don't want that to happen with Keenan. I don't want this to be a situation where he never really pops off in a game. And then when it comes time to do the Bears resign Keenan Allen, and then he's kind of like, well, I don't know if I would say that I would want to come back because I didn't get the production. But, I just want to see a big game out of Keenan. And those are my two picks.
All right. I like it. I like it a lot. Do you guys have anything else to kind of mention with this matchup against the Washington Commanders?
Yeah, real quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know that we might not get the Jaden and Caleb matchup we want, but there's still some other interesting matchups uh in this game that don't have to do with exactly the players. So coach wise, we could have obviously uh hired Cliff Kingsbury as our OC. And then a couple years ago when we hired Flus, we could have also got, or even this past season, like we didn't have to keep Flus and we could have fired him and we could have hired Dan Quinn. So those two matchups are very interesting to keep an eye on this week. I don't know if either of you guys have anything to say about those, but like obviously Dan Quinn's a well-respected head coach, and yeah, he lost the Super Bowl in um, Atlanta pretty bad, and yeah, his defense kind of fell apart last year in Dallas, but he's been doing pretty good, obviously, as a head coach this year. And then Cliff Kingsbury's offense has looked obviously pretty dominant, and definitely looking better than Shane Walter's offense for the first 3 weeks of the season. But now that's kind of evened out. So yeah, if you guys have any thoughts on those two uh, coaches in terms of the Bears and this matchup, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting this week. When questioned about Caleb Williams, Cliff Kingsbury had a lot to say. Just the run of the mill. He's a great player. I had a great time with him at USC and that kind of thing. But then when they kind of asked him about potentially the Bears hiring him as their offensive coordinator, he declined to comment, which, take it as you will. I don't know if it was rather him being disappointed that he didn't get the job and didn't want to talk about it, or if it was more of a that was in the past, we're in the future. I'm with Jaden Daniels now, that kind of thing. But I thought it was just an interesting little tidbit there. And then as for Dan Quinn, that is another interesting storyline to pay attention to. I don't know what this Bears team would really look like if Dan Quinn was hired as the head coach back then, but it is something interesting to think about. But unless anything else that you guys have to add for this matchup before we kind of transition into the NFC North, which we'll go ahead and do. There are a lot of important matchups this week, but by the time you see this, one of them will have already occurred. So we'll just talk about the other two. We'll start with the less interesting one to me. We'll go Lions Titans. I believe this game is at Ford Field, so it'll be a home game for Detroit. They take on the Tennessee Titans. To me, I think this is what should be a pretty easy win for the Lions. I think the only thing that's interesting with this matchup will be the Titans' run defense against the two great backs there in Detroit with Monty and Jahmyr Gibbs. But I don't think it really should be much of a strain for Detroit to win this game. I think the quarterback change for Tennessee, going from Levis to right off the tip of my tongue, I cannot
Mason
remember.
Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph. There you
Yeah.
go. Steelers legend Mason Rudolph. He did play well last week, but I don't think it will be a good enough performance to overcome this Detroit team. It would be a major upset, which I think we can all agree would be awesome for the division race. But I think I think Detroit handles this one pretty easy. Isaac, I'll toss it to you. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this game it's gonna be hard for Tennessee to win. I feel like all hope is lost over there in Nashville, and they're just starting to prepare for the mock everyone's starting to mock draft. All the Titans are fans are mock drafting right now for to see what quarterback they're gonna end up drafting. But it's gonna be an easy game for Detroit. I don't think this is a trap game by any means. I think especially when the Lions are playing at home, it's gonna be an easy win. And then I would say like maybe it's probably gonna be like a 30-10 Detroit Lions victory. And then I'll toss it over to you, Joe, and your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of already covered the Titans. They're done. They've given up on the season. They traded away D Hop this week, and they also traded away their linebacker Ernest Jones. I think they're kind of obviously no team really packs it in, but from fans' perspectives, it looks like they're packing it in, looking to go and draft a quarterback this year. I think this game is closer to what the uh, Cowboys game was with the Lions. I know the Lions hate the Cowboys, but the Titans are way worse than the Cowboys. So let's go like 40-7. But my caveat to that is the Lions potentially learned from that Dallas game and might not play their starters the whole game if they're blowing them out. So if that happens, then the chance that it doesn't get that high scoring for the Lions. But if Dan Campbell doesn't pull his starters, they could get that bad.
Yeah, we're all in agreement. I think this is just an easy win for Detroit. But I will say, looking this up, the all-time record between these two teams, the Titans lead it 10-3. So, there's a little hope. There's a little sliver. There's not much there for Tennessee, but that's something to think about. But yeah, we're all easily picking Detroit in this one. I don't think there's too much conversation around it. But we'll kind of transition into this other matchup, which is more interesting, but maybe not as much Packers versus Jaguars. This one is in Jacksonville. So, not a home game for Green Bay, which traditionally they excel in. This is a game to where all over Twitter, I have seen a lot of Packers nervous for some reason. I think there's always at least one game a year that the Packers lose that they should not. And I do not think it's this week. I think Green Bay's just too well coached. But there are some flashes on that Jacksonville offense, and whether or not this is the week that they kind of make it closer than it should be, I'm not 100% sure it is. Um, I'm still picking Green Bay in this game, but I do think this is going to be a kind of what's the word? Skin of their teeth win by Green Bay. But I don't think it's a 3-point game, but I do think it's going to be kind of like a 27-21 win for Green Bay over Jacksonville. Isaac, I'll start with you on this one. Uh, we've already played Jacksonville, so we know what to expect from that team. But any given Sunday, I personally take Green Bay in this one. But what are your thoughts?
No, yeah, definitely agree with you, Eli. I do think this game is going to be closer than the Detroit Lions Tennessee Titans game, but you know, Jacksonville, it's an interesting situation because they just paid Trevor Lawrence like 50 million a year and he hasn't been living up to expectations. And we can all come into agreement here that I think it's more on the team than Trevor that's been the problem in Jacksonville. But they have pieces on offense and defense. Like so on offense, they have Trevor Lawrence, they have Brian Thomas Jr. now. They have a couple of good offensive linemen. On defense, they have that really solid, underrated duo and Trevon Walker and Josh Hines Allen. So I think, you know, next year, if they end up firing Doug Peterson, they hire a new head coach, they kind of rebuild the team and just kind of start from the like start brand new. Like, okay, guys, like we're gonna put in a new philosophy in this building, like stuff like that. I think the Jaguars can be a good team. But that said, I am going Green Bay on this. I just think that, like Eli mentioned, Green Bay is just too well coached, and especially since they brought in Robert Saleh as in a like a fluid role, what they were mentioning. I do think Saleh is a really good coach. I think he's gonna help Green Bay's defense even more than they've already improved from last season. I would probably say Green Bay wins maybe like 25-13 or something like that. But that's my or game prediction for that. And I'll toss it over to you, Joe.
Okay. So I don't know if either of you guys really watched the London game last weekend between the Jags and Patriots. Uh, it wasn't very good, but I watched it. The Jaguars offense looked like it was finally getting clicking again. I mean, they had, I think, one other game against the Colts that looked pretty good. Last weekend looked pretty good. Uh, the Packers still can't really stop the run, but they do have a really good pass rush. It's really dangerous. Um, so if the Jaguars get down early in this game, I don't feel like they're going to be in big trouble. I think they got to keep it close to run the ball, so they can run the ball with Hank Bigsby and ETN if he's back. But I'm picking the Packers, even though I hate to pick the Packers, obviously. But I think it'll be let's. I think the Packers get up early. Let's go 28-14.
I like it. We all three picked Green Bay to win, so that means they are going to lose in embarrassing fashion. That's how I think that's how it works. Uh, but we will circle back to the Chicago Bears, the scoring predictions there. I will start it off. Let's just keep it traditional and let's throw it back to that matchup on Thursday Night Football last year. 40-20. I am going to pick the Chicago Bears to win. I'm going to keep the same score that we did last year and hopefully a similar performance from Chicago to keep this train rolling and improve to 5-2. Isaac, I will go to you. Your score prediction for the Chicago Bears Commanders game.
You know, I wish I could say the same, I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, should I say 40-20? Nah. Um, I don't think the Commanders are going to be able to score 20 points on us, especially with Mariota playing. And then I also don't think the Bears are going to get up to 40 just because, it's away. The Commanders fans are probably going to be really loud because they really want the Bears to lose. And they're probably not going to, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the Bears are going to put up 40, but I do think it would be another 30-point performance from Chicago. So I would say maybe 32-17 Bears. I'll toss it over to you, Joe.
Uh, yeah, I don't. I think with Mariota, it definitely drops the amount of points the Commander score. But I don't know if the Bears cross 30 again. I think their offense is going to look good. Uh, but I just don't know if they'll get to 30 points. Let's go 28-17. Uh, I think the Bears lead this whole game. I obviously, I hope I I hope, but the score prediction isn't. I hope the Bears win, but I hope my score prediction isn't right because I do want to see the offense kind of explode and the passing yards that I predicted happen. And I feel like if the points aren't higher, then that won't happen. But yeah, 28-17. I also think it's funny that you said traditional and then you went 40-20, Eli, because that's definitely not the traditional score. I get where you're going, but like it's not that's not the traditional score.
Maybe this is the start of a tradition. How about that? Tradition for the Chicago Bears to beat up on the Washington Commanders. But in
Well,
all
more what I
serious,
mean is like in terms of NFL scores, that's not a traditional score because it's
yeah. If I
high.
might be mistaken, but I want to that might have been a scoregami last year if I remember that correctly. But I might be wrong on that. But on a serious note, I don't think I'm actually going to pick 40-20. I really just wanted to see your guys' reactions with that. I if it did happen, I think it'd be the funniest thing in the world. But I do think it'll be closer than that. But I do think the Bears, you have to keep in mind that this is also a late game. It has been flexed to 325. And all week, Cole Kmet talked about it, and I think DJ Moore mentioned it. The Bears are tired of playing at noon, is what they've been saying. So maybe this is an opportunity for them to, beat up on an opponent and kind of show the league that they mean business. And now I don't think it's going to be a complete blowout. I think 28-17 is a good score, but also I think the Bears have a chance of reaching 30 points personally. I think it can be a 31-19 victory for the Chicago Bears, but that's what I'm going to go with. So, do you guys have anything else to mention before we head on out of here? All right, perfect. So, once again, a reminder, this game has been flexed from noon to 325. Originally, I think the plan was to see the Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels showdown, a battle of two teams that are 5-2 and 4-2 now. So, that obviously probably isn't going to happen, but that was the original plan. But the game, once again, at 325 this week, Central Time. So 125 for you, Isaac. Would that be correct? Yeah, 125 for Isaac. So he'll be ready and we'll be ready. And hopefully everyone else will be ready to see the Bears win on Sunday, 325. So we are going to head on out of here. Again, let's hope for a Bears win. Joe, one more thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to mention, don't forget to share the podcast, leave a like, um, and review after whatever you were listening on, and then also check out our TikTok and YouTube Shorts. Leave likes on those; help. Comments too, interaction. Yeah, that's it. I just want to make sure we got that in there.
Absolutely, yeah. Keep us rolling on social media, and hopefully the Bears will keep rolling as well and improve to 5-2 this week. But with that being said, from Eli, Joe, and Isaac, we will see you, hopefully, after a Bears win on Sunday.